Now we will start the first 4-minute opening statement, Mr. DioGuardi.
Good evening. Let me thank the Dutchess Community College and the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. As Thomas Jefferson said, information is the currency of democracy, and you're entitled to know what your elected representatives have been doing. They should be defending their record, and that's why I'm in this race. But who is Joe DioGuardi? Well, I'm a former member of Congress. That's unusual. You don't find many former members trying to get back in. It's not an easy job, but it's an honorable job and one that was certainly exciting for me. I have had a lifetime full of service. I was in a public accounting firm for 22 years. Prior to that, I was a waiter working my way through college. I'm the son of immigrants. They had a mom-and-pop grocery store in the South Bronx, so you might say that from my early days, I've been exposed to people and problems, made my mistakes early in life, and feel real fortunate that I was able to have that kind of an upbringing. Actually at the age of 43, in 1984, I decided to do something that surprised a lot of people. I decided to willingly give up a very successful career as a certified public accountant at Arthur Andersen and Company, one of the world's largest accounting firms, to run for public office. I had been involved, like many of you, in community activities, but I wanted to express my service in a different way, surprise a lot of people by challenging my own party once again, and won in that race after a difficult situation, having to remove 7 other Republicans and conservatives that wanted that same position. I served in Congress for 4 years, the lower part of Westchester County. This is a different district, but 1/3 of my old district is in this district, and I want to continue to serve the people. I'm an activist. I'm a reformer. I'm a human rights activist. I've gone to the Balkans 15 times in the last 5 years as a citizen. No one pays me to do that. But people think I do such a good enough job on it. They literally say, Joe, we want you there. We'll pay your expenses. Protect those people who are being oppressed by state-run terrorism. Why am I in this particular race, especially when my old friend Newt Gingrich said, Joe, get out of the race. We'd like to see Sue Kelly there. I'm in this race because the two-party system, and mind you, I'm a registered Republican, and I'm running as a Republican on the conservative and right-to-life lines. We need more competition. The two-party system isn't working that well. There's not enough access to political office. There isn't a level playing field. It was tough enough for me as a former member to do it. I can imagine how tough it would be for you. But the people want me in this race. Monday, an office was opened in Wappingers Falls for Joe DioGuardi's campaign. Not by me, by 50 volunteers. They decided it was important enough to do to get my message because they didn't feel the other candidates represented that message. Tomorrow, we open up an office in Putnam County for the same reasons. Who are my opponents? Basically, liberals, a liberal Democrat and a liberal Republican, locked into liberal thinking that's going to cost you more money. Because when you think like a liberal, that means you want more government program further away from the people. And that's what the federal government is doing, spending your money far away from you, and it's difficult to get that accountability. It's not like a school board. That's where the rubber hits the ground. You can remove the entire school board in 1 year if you don't like them. Very difficult to do in Washington, especially with an election system that keeps away the competition, tries to ordain incumbents, and a campaign finance system which does the same thing. You know, I saw the bureaucracy. You know what my definition of bureaucracy is? It's the process of turning energy into solid waste. That's what I witnessed in Washington. The bureaucracy is sucking up too many tax dollars. As a conservative, we need to move government closer to the people. We need to get the federal government out of different programs, and those are the things I hope to talk about during this debate. Thank you.
One minute you each have to answer. What is your position on the balanced budget amendment? If you indeed support it, how will you balance the budget? Mr. DioGuardi.
We are drowning in debt and we're drowning in taxes. Jerry and Sue will mention the Congressional Accountability Act. But you know what they forgot in that act? They forgot to impose on Congress and the federal government the same accounting systems that are imposed through the Securities Exchange Commission, which they prescribe for other reasons, to protect shareholders. No one is protecting taxpayers. Everybody's for a balanced budget amendment. We tried to do this with the Graham-Rudman, and everybody talks about it, but you'll never have it. I'm the only certified public accountant, would you believe it, ever elected to Congress in 221 years. You know what I left behind when I left Congress? 276 lawyers. Imagine a place with 276 lawyers and no accountant, and they want to balance the books. Everybody's spending, nobody's counting. Jerry, Sue, let's bring a good set of books to Washington. Generally accepted accounting principles, independent audits. Let's do what publicly traded corporations must do, and then you'll have accountability, and you might then have a balanced budget. Thank you.
Next question. What are your feelings on the increasing interdependence of the world's economy? Should the United States pull out of NAFTA, GATT, and the WTO?
The issue is really fair trade. I think the United States of America has been taken advantage of by many nations. We saw it in the 80s with Japan, and I would dare say it's happening right now. We need to create a level playing field. We don't want to protect inefficient producers in the United States of America. That's the issue here. If we start protecting our domestic economy from outsiders without good reason, what we will be doing is giving a bad product to domestic consumers as well as consumers abroad. There will be inefficiency then that will be ordained the order of the day. So we need to have fair trade, free trade, but we need to be sure it's fair. I went to Hong Kong in 1993 to discuss this issue comparing the Chinese economy and that's mainland China and the US economy. There are other things that we can do. We need to be fully engaged. There is interdependence because we want to be sure that we can use our position, even with respect to human rights, in terms of trading policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question. If you are elected, would you support a proposal guaranteeing universal health care for all, and how should it be funded?
We've already imposed a mindless bureaucracy on the medical profession, and we have forced them to be accountants and paper shufflers. And if we were to create a national system of health care and turn it over to the federal government, we would have the Canadian experience. It's there for us to see. They're rationing health care. This system is the best health care system in the world. Let's work with it and refine it. Let's not change it too much, but let's get to the issue. The issue is the cost of medicine in this country. We've got to make health care more affordable. We've got to put a cap on the pain and suffering. We've got to control these trial attorneys, these ambulance chases. If someone suffers damages, count it up to $5 million, you want to give it to them. But pain and suffering, $250,000 and no more, then you'll begin to see insurance premiums decrease, defensive medicine will decrease, Dr. Klein and all of his associates would not be making all the tests they're making today in order to cover their rear end in terms of a suit later on. This is what's killing America, the cost of health care. Let's get it down.
Thank you. Okay, we have two questions on education, if we can kind of lump them together and start with Mr. DioGuardi. First one is, do you support abolishing the U.S. Department of Education? And second, how does education rank in importance among the issues to you?
Yes, I would abolish the Department of Education. I would abolish the Department of Energy, Department of Commerce. As a conservative, we need to bring these functions back to the state and the localities where they belong. Let's keep the federal government in the business that it must be in, defense, the environment, and other things. Education is a local issue. It's funded for the most part through local taxes. In terms of the condition of education locally, it is one of the most important issues because school taxes, you go anywhere as a congressional candidate, they don't want to talk about federal taxes, they want to talk about school taxes. That's where the rubber hits the ground. That's where the people are impacted the most. The values of houses are going down as school taxes are going up. Let's bring competition to education. What's wrong with school choice? What's wrong with giving a rebate back to those homeowners? Let's say 20% of their school taxes back to those who have children so that they can shop around and then complement or supplement the budgets of those schools that are doing the great job. Competition works.
Okay, we have time, I think, for 2 or 3 more questions. What is your view on semi-automatic weapons in regard to gun control?
You've heard of one flip-flop in this race, but there are many, and we probably won't get to them tonight, but I can tell you that that was an egregious one because in 1974, in the primary we had then 7 people, Sue Kelly stood up proudly in writing and said, my 10-point crime program is that I'm for a ban on assault weapons. Then she got to Washington and she met the NRA, got $13,000, and she now believes that we should have assault weapons. I'm for the right to bear arms. If gun control laws worked, New York City would be a very safe place. It has among the strongest gun control laws in America. The issue is to enforce the laws. As a congressman, I brought creative thinking to the process. I was the one that formed a partnership between the Drug Enforcement Agency and 43 local police departments in Westchester County, and that's working today because I gave an incentive to the local police. They get part of the confiscation proceeds so they can fund their department. I'm the only one in this race that's endorsed by the Metropolitan Police Conference and all the police associations in the district because they know that Joe DioGuardi is tough on crime.
Thank you. Okay. We have time for one more question, and then we'll have closing statements. And we will start with Mrs. Kelly. What specific actions would you take to promote more jobs for residents of the Hudson Valley? Mr. DioGuardi?
Job creation has to be a public-private partnership. I started something 18 months ago called the New York Task Force on Port, Rail, Industrial Development because I found that we did something very dumb years ago. What we did is we allowed Jersey to take the Port of New York and we allowed it to go from where it should have been, where the deep natural harbor was on the New York side, where it doesn't have to be dredged and you don't have the environmental problems you have on the other side. Well, what you find is that that same concept applies here. The vision that we built our economy on from New York City to up here is a vision that says we will look to the future only to white-collar jobs. That's why we took the World Trade Centers and gave the port to Port Elizabeth and Port Newark. That's a wrong vision. White-collar jobs are important, but look what's happened. With technology, everybody's downsizing. We need to create an infrastructure also for blue-collar jobs. And you've got a wonderful opportunity to do it along the Hudson from Yonkers and North Tarrytown, Fishkill, and Poughkeepsie, and we need to go back to that. Thank you.
We will now have 2 minutes for each candidate to have a closing statement. Mr. DioGuardi.
Dr. Klein, might be nice to have a doctor in the house, but I think it's better to have an accountant, especially now. We are drowning in debt. Sue Kelly, ham fish. I knew Hamfish. I worked with him, and he was no friend of yours. Hamfish, you campaigned against him. In 1992, you worked against Hamfish. Neil McCarthy said it in 1994 with Hamfish's son, that you literally were outside of his office, and you supported Neil McCarthy over Hamfish. In any case, I think we should set the record straight on that, and I'm glad to see you here tonight because we've had 16 debates scheduled, and she's agreed to be in 4. In our primary, she showed up at 1. I think a representative should be accountable for their votes, and this is important. This process is important. I'm glad that we're doing it. Now, let me show you something to leave you with an image. Many people don't know what this is. This is a congressional voting card. I still carry it. It doesn't work. Those computer holes are not charged yet. This, my friends, is the most expensive credit card in the world. Because every time this card is used, at the edge of a row of seats, you are charging the next generation. This is the card that forces the Treasury to spend the money. This is the card, an appropriations bill, that forces the Treasury, when it doesn't have the money, to go out and sell bonds, and we put the debt on the next generation. Worse than that, the debt that you think is the debt, the $5 trillion, is the good news. What's off the books, and all CPAs know it, is another $17 trillion. We've only bonded $5 trillion. But somewhere along the line, the next generation is going to have to pay the rest. I conclude with another thing. You know, we had a lot of negative campaigning in the primary. I look to my opponents here, and I would hope you would join me in a pledge, because my family, my volunteers, my staff were a victim of last-minute negative campaign ads, and I think that's scurrilous. I hope we can get a pledge tonight that we will not have that in this race.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. I hope we've shed more light than darkness here tonight, and I appreciate the candidates coming, the audience participating, and again, a big thank you to Dutchess Community College.